Welcome to CX Matters, the podcast where we dive into all matters CX to find out what really makes the difference, what moves the needle, and what makes customers tick. CX Matters is a podcast powered by Hello Customer, the platform that helps organizations turn feedback into real business improvements. My name is Bram De Vos and I am your host. And today, my guest is Michel Stevens. Michel is one of the most experienced voices in customer experience today. Over the past 20 years, he's helped companies rethink how they build customer relationships, not just through processes and technology, but through culture and behavior. Michel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Bram. I'm very happy to be here.
Couldn't be happier than I am. Really pleased that you're with us here. Now, Michel, you've been talking about customer experience for quite a while, and I think long before it became the buzzword that it is today. And what I really appreciate in the conversations that you and I have had is that you are really grounded about that topic. You don't romanticize in any shape or form the whole field. You don't romanticize it. You treat it as a tool, as a management tool, as a management field, really. And you want it to deliver results. And I think that's the right way to approach it. So maybe let's start there. I know that you talk a lot about a customer-centric culture as being foundational to success. Why is it that important? Why is that more important than talking about processes or technology or anything of that nature?
Well, I think that in these days, when we talk about customer centricity or customer experience, it is really about how are we going to differentiate ourselves from others. Just the other day, I was in a conversation with an organization that was deep into B2B, and they said, any other of our competitors, they make the same products as we do, and we struggle to make the difference. How do we do that? We cannot do it on the product itself. Of course, there is some innovation in there, and you have some more advanced products for sure. But apart from that, how do you do that? So you have two other angles that you can have, right? So you can become the cheapest one, which is a sport that many organizations play these days, or you can be the one that is closest to its customers. And as a principle, that works well, but how do you do that? And especially how do you do that in complex environments like a B2B, or how do you do that at scale? For an organization like the butcher just around the corner, it is quite easy to do because basically the 50 people that you have as a customer, or 500, I don't know, it is easy to remember to who you sold that steak or that one dish, all right? So that's easy, but how do you do that when you have thousands or even millions of customers? And that is the thing that I've been working on for the last, 20 years. And that is really the question that I ask myself. So how do you do that? How do you go beyond the transaction and more towards the relationship?
I would think that if you take the example of the butcher is a very, very good example. You say he or she could remember the 500 customers that they normally have. But I would think that solving that problem would be a technological problem. And yet in your writings, you always emphasize that it's a cultural problem rather more than a technological or a process problem. Why emphasize that so much? Couldn't technologies solve any problem you have in that field?
I think that technology on its own has little value. It is a lever. It is something that will accelerate whatever is going on. But at the most foundational level, you need to actually take one step back and look at what do customers want from us, right? So what do they want? And I don't know about you, but sometimes I buy things because they're convenient, because they're nearby. But when you come into in situations where you have to think about where am I going to buy, I rather have an organization where I go like, hey, they treat me well. I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to make it real plain simple. This morning, I went to a workshop. I had to, my car needed maintenance. And I walked in and I was a little bit early. And I saw that there was this reception desk and there was a lady sitting behind it. And she was doing all kinds of important stuff. It was that important that she couldn't pay attention to 3 people that in the meanwhile had walked in, right? And it was only after 5 minutes that somebody really in the back of that office got up and said, hey, can I help you? And I was like, it is not that difficult these days to just look up, but you need to want it. Why do people buy a product? It's, of course, there is a functional aspect to it, but there is absolutely also an emotional and a social component to that.
You've got the wanted. That kind of strikes me, because the lady that you described there, who was very busy doing all sorts of things, but didn't look up, she didn't acknowledge the fact that you were there and maybe some other customers were there. Is that something that is, where is that culture? Is that the culture within that person? Or is that the culture of the organization? And how do you tackle it? How do you change it? How do you, if you would be the manager of that place, how would you fix that?
Yeah, I think that nobody gets up in the morning and thinks to him or herself, I'm going to do a bad job for the customer. I think I genuinely hope that nobody thinks that way, right? Like, I'm going to mess up for the customer today. I think everybody wants to do right, but there is a system in place where, or a culture, right? Let's go back with what is culture actually? Culture are the things that we do that we take for granted. Right. So everything that you see that happens, and you see that it just happens and nobody reacts to it, then things will happen over time as well. There was this situation many years ago where there was a letter going out to residents of a retirement home, and this was in a very stressful period. It was in a COVID period, so you could imagine that the letter to the people, to the elder living in that retirement home, it was very severe. It was very strict. It was like there were things in there like you all witnessed the war, so this is much worse. That kind of tone. And
that's not mincing the words. That's okay,
exactly. And everybody was saying, "Oh, it is an outrage that person writes something in that letter." And I said, well, take it from her position. She wrote that because of obviously there was a lot of stress involved. It was a high pressure environment. It was days, hours, maybe even before the lockdown. So there was a lot of uncertainty, and there was a lot of pressure on that person who wrote that. That's one thing, but also that she thought that it was okay to write stuff like that. So that meant that her moral compass was compromised in some kind of way. And that is most likely also a result of a culture of where it was acceptable to talk about these things in a retirement home context. So things happen because we allow them to happen over time. So if there is anybody who is not really focused on the customer, and these can be small things, right?
Of course.
Then, you need to act as a leader. You need to take action, and you need to rectify it right there, because otherwise people are going to...
In the moment, you've got to intervene as you see it happen, as you see it unfold?
That is one of the roles of a leader. It is actually to rectify whatever you believe is not right. And of course, you need alignment within the organization, right? You need to align what is customer-centric. What does that mean for us, right? And what kind of behavior do we want to see? What kind of behavior do we want to encourage? And once that is in place, once you have normality in place, then you can actually talk about, okay, so how are we going to refine processes? And are we going to use technology to do that?
Yes, more as levers or as enablers or as facilitators, catalysts, if you like.
Yeah.
But have you seen in your expertise, because you've worked with so many teams over the years, have you seen people actually take that internalize that kind of, because you talk about a culture as being the things that we take for granted. Changing that in somebody's head is not a small thing. Have you seen that happen? Have you been surprised by the ability of people to internalize that, to take that into themselves?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that the most important thing there is that you have, as a leadership, that you have a very good story, right? Okay. So a lot of people talk about strategy. And of course, strategy is a placeholder for we're going from A and we're now at A and we're going to B. Right? I like to think of them as stories. So how are we going to go from A to B, right? What are we going to do, and why do we need to do that? That is one thing. And then another thing is that, and this is something that a good friend of mine just talked about, and he wrote a book about it actually, is that it not only do you need a story, but you also need some resonance. It needs to resonate with the person that you're telling the story to on a deeper level. It needs to be something where people go like, oh yeah, I can get behind that, right? I don't know about you, but I am generally not excited about the next AI strategy. Oh, we're going to do an AI strategy. Fantastic. Wow, that's great. Congratulations on that. I don't know what it means. I don't know what's in it for me. I don't get that. So unlikely that I will get behind it. And a lot of things happen in the same way. There is this new strategy. Strategy 2030. Yeah. Okay, we get it. So, but what does that mean? How does that resonate with me on a personal level? How does that align with my moral compass as well? How does that align with what I'm seeing around me as well, right? And once those things are in place, that's when you actually need to make sure as a leadership that people can actually absorb it and do their thing. So get out of the way.
Your method, if I might call it that, is you give stories, or you find stories, you crystallize stories as a means to get a vision about the future culture across.
Absolutely, 100%. 100%.
I think it's one of the oldest methods in the book, isn't it? I mean, it's what makes us people, is the storytelling. But I can imagine it's not that easy to do. How do you find these stories? Is that by observation? Is it anecdotal, literally, like you were saying? You were explaining an anecdote this morning. Is that the way do you do it?
Yeah. Well, go to Gemba. It's something that I've been trained to do when I was into Lean Six Sigma. They said, go to Gemba, go to the factory floor, see what happens. And it's also whenever I am working with a new client, one of the first things I do is sit down and observe what is going on here and what is happening and why do things happen. There was this crazy story not that long ago where I was sitting with customer service people. And it was at a utilities company. And at some point, there were a lot of calls around a move. So a customer was actually moving from A to B. So, and they need to modify their contract. And somebody said, well, that's actually odd because people can find all that information online. They just need to type in a weird combination. It was a very weird name for the document. It was a document of abandonment or something like that. It was a
cruel name.
Yeah, it was a cool name, right? Me as a customer, I would look for move document or something or something like that.
Abandonment.
But it was a document of abandonment.
Document of devastation, abandonment, loss, and tragic death.
Something like that, yeah. So I was listening to these, and there were actually quite a lot of these calls. Like, dear customer, you know what? I will send you the document, right? It was just something that I take from the website. Okay, document of abandonment. Okay, and I'm sending it right to you right now. So I asked people, why do we call this a document of abandonment? Well, that's because the building is vacant and it was abandoned by the previous owner. I said, well, what happens when we change the name of that document that people can actually find it when they go for like move document or something? Well, I don't know.
Yep. Moving house. I mean,
there you
obviously,
go. Yeah. They changed the name of that document. Guess what happened?
A lot less calls came in. Everybody found it online.
Yeah, there you
just
go.
All by themselves. Yeah.
And the funny thing is,
remarkable.
You can only know these things when you go to Gemba, when you sit down and listen to what is going on. And I think that
it's actually fun to do. I mean, the way that you describe it, because it's such an obvious thing. I mean, it jumps to the eye right away. A document calling abandonment. It sounds silly. But the thing is, when you're in there, you don't see that anymore. It's a given for you. And this is what is often said. The last thing that a fish discovers is the water that it swims in. For those people, the name of that document and the way and the fact that they have to say that to somebody, I'll give you the document of abandonment, it's normal. So you change that. And I think that's one of the privileges of your position and my position very often is that we can come in and see those things and observe those things that are very obviously wrong or not fitted well into the context. We can spot them right away because we have the luxury of not being deeply ingrained into the context yet. Another thing is changing things. Sometimes I find, I don't know what your experience is, changing things that are set pieces fixed into the fabric is sometimes very, very difficult. There's a lot of, people don't want it, people don't welcome it. Should we do that? Should we spend time on that? What's your take?
I fully agree. It is not, it's not fun to change. It is not fun because you are set in your own ways. There are things that you like, there are things that you dislike. And we as humans, we are not wired for constant change by nature, by default. But I think that in a business context, the only thing that is sure is that there is change because your competitors are adapting, your customers are changing. And if you stay wherever you are right now, I can assure you, you will not survive, right? And the thing is that we need to find a currency within our organization. How can we make sure that the change leads to something that is of value for us?
That's an interesting point. Yeah, do elaborate on that. The currency, it's an interesting way.
So very often when we as CX professionals talk about customer centricity or customer experience or customer focus or change, we talk about we need a 5% change in customer satisfaction scores, or we need our NPS to go up or whatever, something like that. The problem is that your senior leadership, well, they do understand that, of course, they're not dumb. But it doesn't resonate with them. At the end of the day, they are judged on how much growth did we make, how much did we save, stuff like that, right? And on the other side of the spectrum, you have your staff, and they speak a totally different language as well. They are not relating to your 5% uptick in customer satisfaction because it doesn't relate to the operational reality they face. They face for instance, we saw 3% more calls coming in and we had to transfer 5% more.
That's their language.
That's their language. And so you need to find a way to unite these three metrics, these three types of metrics, right?
So 3 types of metrics. Again, which ones? So 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. The one I just described was the operational one. Those are descriptive metrics. They describe what happened in reality. It could be like a high service level, for instance, and a low transfer rate in the call center, right? Okay. Or a high first time right, if I'm juggling with juggling with the left turns. And then 2 is the Net Promoter Score, customer effort score, sentiment analysis these days. So the things that typically customer experience professional talks in, right?
Yep.
It is a perception. Those metrics describe a perception that a customer has.
And then 3?
And then 3 are the outcome metrics. So what is the result of that perception? Right, that could be a customer lifetime value. That could be revenue. That could be
increase in churn, upsell.
There you
going
go.
Up. Right.
Category.
Okay. Yeah. Now, if you take those 3 metrics and you weave them into one fabric, one of the things that I'm always interested in is how do you get the frontline people on board? Because I've often seen initiatives fail because of the lack of desire within that group of people, very important group of people, to absorb or to adopt the change. In your experience, when you look at those 3 metrics, what are the ones that resonate the best with them? How broad must you tackle the topic? Must you involve those 3 metrics within what you tell them, or do you just show them one of these metrics and motivate them using those methods? What is the best way to do that? Or how do you, let me rephrase the question. If you would like to, which is something I greatly believe in, if you would like to empower your frontline employees to do a better job, what works best?
Right. I think that in any organization, you need to treat people like the adults that they are. Right. I don't know about you. I run my own business and I want to make money. That's the reality. I need to pay the government a lot of taxes always.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
I've stopped doing that a long time ago.
But we can joke about it. But at the end of the day, we are measured by how successful our company is. And everybody in an organization knows that and understands that. There is some kind of value that needs to be delivered to the business, right? And on the other hand, there is also some kind of value that needs to be delivered to the customer as well, right? And how do you express that value? That could be like we serve our customers better, right? But make that tangible, right? How do you make that tangible? How can I make sure that by focusing on delivering value to the customer, how can I make sure that I also deliver value to the organization? One of the worst things that we can do is to tell our people the customer is always right.
I so totally agree with that. Yes.
You put people in a no-win position.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They are squeezed into this mold where they know, like, okay, I should do things for my customer because the customer is always right, or a variance of that. But deep down they know, well, that's not true, because at the end of the day, we all need to be paid, right? We are paid in euros and not in smileys, right? So how does that? They are in a no-win situation. And that's why I always tell people, clarify that. What do you want? What do you want from what do you want from your employees? What do you want them to do, right? And for that, I explain them, like, there is a rational component to customer centricity and there is an emotional component to customer centricity. Some people are drawn to the emotional side. I myself was drawn to the emotional side. I wanted to make customers happy. That was just how I am wired. That's what I believe in. But there is also the rational side of things, and that is, how can we make sure that through customer centricity, we can actually make more money? And that is also a side that we need to explain. And it's only when you explain that duality that people will go like, okay, that's interesting. They need to buy into that story again, right? And then we can talk about how are you going to do that. But before anything, you need to make people aware that something needs to happen, something needs to change, right? And it's not because you do things wrong, but it's just the environment is changing, customers are changing, and we are standing still. So something needs to give, right? And then you need to build up the desire to actually make that change happen. It needs to come from them. They will drive that.
Precisely, because you're treating them like grown-ups.
Exactly.
Right? And it's that's one of the things that I find to be lacking sometimes in some, still today. I mean, we've been in the 21st century for quite a while, but still now I can see still managers treating their employees like it's the 19th century. And you have to treat them like grown-ups, and you have to explain things. I love the notion of, using stories to do that, because at the end of the day, it's not that complex. It may be complex to do, maybe complex to execute. There's always a balance to strike, but essentially it's not that difficult. Another thing I wanted to definitely touch on in this podcast is the following. I know you travel a lot. You see a lot of the world. You train in many places. You've got an academy that you're leading. You meet a lot of thought leaders. You're on conferences and so forth and so on. And so, in your opinion, what are the trends? And I'm not looking for some kind of buzzwords, AI stuff. We can all look that up. But do you see trends? Do you see things changing in your field? Things that somebody who is not within the field can relate to and understand?
I am very optimistic about the next years. So the next decade will be something that is going to be quite something, and that has very little to do with technology. I think that technology plays an accelerator to it, but the next few years will force us to answer a few fundamental questions, right? And we are forced in that position because it means that how are we going to make the difference? How are we as an organization going to make a difference? Because everybody can achieve the average now, right?
Yes.
The
average is attainable for everyone all of a sudden.
AI says the average of the internet. It's not artificial intelligence, it's average of internet, right? So everybody can attain that averageness. So then the question is, what makes us us? And the organizations that think about that or know that already are the ones that are going to accelerate. And that is because it has to do with trust, right? It has to do with honesty. And these are all things that are coming back now. And you can see that organizations that are clever, they don't necessarily use AI to shave off a few 100 euros or maybe 1,000 euros these days, or millions maybe. They don't necessarily use it for productivity reasons. They try to understand, how is this technology going to help us to do things differently? We don't need something that goes faster or cheaper. Seriously, we do not need that. I will agree on, however, that we need to explore technology. And if it's AI, it's AI. If it's something else, it's something else. we need to understand the boundaries of technology. We need to wrap our heads around it. And once you understand that, then you can actually understand the power that the technology holds, right? And then you can actually do something with that. So I think that right now we are bolting on technology on a lot of existing processes and doing it faster and cheaper. But actually the question should be, how can we make it better?
Yeah,
right?
and more authentic and more sincere and so forth and so on. And we share that optimism because you can look at what's happening in the world and you can, the glass is half empty or the glass is half full. But what I find very interesting in your way of thinking is that you look at technology as something that is helping to bring back some very old values, such as authenticity and such as being outright and outspoken and to be clear about what you're delivering and to listen also to what the customer wants. And so it's a funny thing that we need this road towards more technology to find again our purpose, our goals as human beings. And it reminds me of something that I think it was Steven van Belleghem who once said that the more digital our world becomes, the more important the human being will be, which is a very hopeful way to put it. But I would think that, listening to you agree with that. You're in that same line of thinking.
Yeah, when in doubt, be human. That's
when in doubt, be human. Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to trademark it.
You should. Yeah, no, you're too late. I just did. Yeah.
No, but it's when in doubt, be human. And that is the thing that will drive us forward. So I'm going to give you an example, and you're going to immediately understand what I mean with that. Is that last year I was in the US and I rented an RV. Long story. I'm going to cut it short. And at some point I was not very happy with how that rental went. So I was there in my RV in the middle of the night in a bed that was way too small. I didn't order that. And what happens when you are all alone in your bed and you wonder, okay, so what is going to happen now? You turn to AI and you weaponize it. You say, okay, dear AI, this is everything that you need to know about this case. Mm-hmm. How can I get even with them?
Oh, you evil man.
Yes, absolutely. And so my AI, he said, well, these are all the things that you can do. Which one do you like to execute? So I went for maximum refund. That was the thing that I did. And I weaponized that AI and I used it against their customer service. I'm not proud of it, but I did it anyway. But the thing is that means that on the other side of the line, there was somebody who was like, wow, this is a well thought of problem statement that you have there. So you needed actually somebody who understands what is that person actually trying to do? What is his problem, right? What is he trying to achieve, right? And if they were only able to do that, then the problem would be solved like in 5 minutes. But they didn't. They stuck to the procedure, they stuck to the process, and they kept on repeating whatever they said in the past. So yeah, it ended up in a bad way. But
I can see where that's coming from, and I like the thought. When in doubt, be human. All right. Well, sadly, that's going to be all we have time for today. Yes, I think we could go on for quite a while, but I thank you, Michel Stevens, for joining me to unpack some foundations of real customer centricities and to find more about how organizations can bridge the gaps between the front line and the back office. And sometimes it helps to be evil. I've learned that as well. So, thank you so much for being here today. CX Matters is a podcast produced by Hello Customer. If you want to discover how your company can act smarter on customer feedback, visit hellocustomer.com. In our next episode, we'll continue the conversation with Horst Remes, another valued CX thought leader. And he'll be challenging some of the biggest assumptions in the field with what he calls the myths of customer experience. Until then, thank you for listening. Goodbye.